Hey everyone, welcome back to another video and another update on Tropical Storm Erin, which is still moving fairly rapidly westward at 17 miles per hour out in the Atlantic. It really has not changed much at all in strength since Tuesday, Monday, Tuesday. Right now it's still at 45 miles per hour, 1,004 millibars, really not much of a change in strength. It's dealing with battling a lot of Saharan dry air in this general region of the Atlantic. But if we do look at the current forecast tracking cone from the Hurricane Center, it does have it reaching hurricane status by Friday morning, by 8 a.m. Friday, and then eventually making its way to major hurricane status by the time we get to Sunday morning at 8 a.m. Now we'll look at the specific intensity, and you'll see that by 8 p.m. Apparently by 8 p.m. later today, it could strengthen to 50 miles per hour. We'll see. And then it'll get to 60 miles per hour by 8 a.m. tomorrow. So it'll start to, it seems like fairly soon, it'll start to eventually slowly strengthen and gain some strength. But then it'll reach a hurricane status, it looks like, by the time we get to, as I said, Friday morning at 8 a.m. And then by the time we get towards the end of the weekend, Sunday morning, it'll, looks like right now it'll likely reach major hurricane status at 115 miles per hour, a Category 3 hurricane. Now, something to note is as it does get further west in its track, it does look like it could. It is staying somewhat further south than we somewhat have been anticipating lately, but it does look like it still will go north of the Leeward Islands, north of Puerto Rico, and kind of along with still for the U.S. East Coast will be more of just a major rip current producer for this whole region. Bermuda seems to be kind of the one area that's highest at risk for maybe a landfall or much more direct impacts at the very least for right now. But right now, Erin has not really changed much in strength, but it does look like fairly soon it will start to gain some strength and slowly intensify as we get into the rest of this work week, and especially towards the weekend, it'll really start to intensify. Now let's take a look at currently what Erin looks like on satellite and infrared imagery. You can see the shape of it is kind of much more into that shrimp-like look, which would indicate typically tropical cyclones are really getting to that position to really start to intensify. But you can see convection generally is definitely starting to blow up a good bit more around the center, but it still is lacking to the most northern parts of the system. But we'll definitely see as we get through the rest of today and into tonight and see what Erin will really do and start to see how it really starts to respond and intensify. You can see this is on the actual kind of satellite loop, visible satellite loop. Now, looking at the models, we'll take a look at the general global models first, and then we'll look at the actual hurricane models. So first, we'll take a look at the GFS American model, look at the general North Atlantic. Here's Erin currently, and as we move into the rest of today, into tomorrow, and then eventually into Friday, you can see it really starts to intensify. The pressure really starts to drop, and the GFS shows it intensifying and getting into the 950s, even 940s, it looks like, apparently, as it curves northward and gets very close to Bermuda there, you can see, and has a lot more direct impacts towards Bermuda than really anywhere else, with it being mainly a more major rip current risk for Puerto Rico, the Virgin Islands, Leeward Islands, and then the U.S. East Coast, especially from the mid-Atlantic northward towards New England. As it starts to really race off up towards the north and eventually become extratropical as we get towards, it looks like towards the end of next week and towards the weekend of next week. But for now, it's really not changing much in strength, but it will soon, it seems, intensify a little bit more. Now, the European model, full 12Z run for the European model. Here is Erin. We move it forward into tomorrow and into Friday. Has it still on a much more southerly tracking, definitely gets it a lot closer to the East Coast. So the European model seems to have stayed consistent over the last day or two, and really, it's really trying to say that the Erin could potentially become a lot stronger of a system, while also being a lot bigger of a rip current risk, and potentially maybe somewhat a rain producer for at least the Outer Banks of North Carolina and that part of the mid-Atlantic before it starts to curve more out to sea, away from New England there. So that's what the European model is showing. The Canadian model, let's see what the Canadian model shows. It looks like it keeps it further to the south, kind of like the European, but definitely has now shifted a lot more to be in line with the GFS model, with it curving much more out to sea, further out to sea, and being a lot less of a threat to the U.S. East Coast, being just a rip current risk for the U.S. East Coast, while also being a much more direct, impactful type of system towards Bermuda before it really ends up moving more out to sea into the North Atlantic, and becoming a post-tropical system. Now, let's take a look at what the hurricane models are showing for Erin. All right, now the HWRF and HMOD models are showing Erin. So let's take a look at them before we take a look at the before we take a look at the HAFS A and B models. So first, we got the HWRF model. Move this forward in time, and we can see it really starts to show it intensifying and becoming a lot stronger of a system, definitely a major hurricane, dropping it into the upper 940s or around 950 millibars as it continues its westward track. And this is by 6Z on Monday, so this is around like 2 a.m. or so, overnight Sunday into Monday. It has it at 944 millibars, it looks like. So definitely strengthening a lot, and becoming a fairly formidable major hurricane by that point in time. Now, let's take a look at the HMON model for Erin. And somewhat similarly, it starts to have it strengthen a little later as we really get more towards Friday. It really has it strengthen a good bit more, and then as we get into Saturday, Sunday, it really shows it intensifying, and really intensifying a lot more as we get towards Sunday, and then towards Monday, getting down to the 950s. So definitely by the time it looks like we get towards the end of this weekend to the very beginning of next week, it looks like Erin very likely will be a major hurricane, with its pressure probably in the 950 millibar range, between 950 and 960. Now let's take a look at the HAFS A model for Erin. And as we move further out in time, you can see it really starts to intensify, brings it down to the 950s as well, brings it down to the 940s, even 930s as we get towards Sunday and into Monday. Wow. So the HAFS A model is definitely the most aggressive so far of the actual hurricane models as we get towards Monday afternoon on the 18th. Dropping it all the way down to the 934 millibars. So that's more towards like Category 4, potential Category 4 hurricane there. HAFS B model for Erin. Let's check this out. So as we get towards Wednesday, Thursday, into Friday, really starts to show it intensifying a lot more as we get towards, obviously, that Friday time frame, and then the weekend especially really showing it intensifying, getting down into the 950s as well, 940s, 930s even. Wow, so this gets it down all the way to 928 millibars by 9Z Monday. So that's early in the morning, Monday morning, toward like, what is that, like 5 a.m. or so Monday morning. So like kind of just before most of us wake up. And then, so yeah, the HAFS A and B models are definitely getting a lot more bullish with the potential intensity for Erin as we get towards the end of this weekend and into the beginning of next week, with it potentially even getting towards that Category 4 intensity. Actually, speaking of which, totally forgot to show you guys the intensity guidance and model track guidance. So this is the general model track guidance for Erin. So definitely showing that consistency of it staying to the north of Puerto Rico, Virgin Islands, Leeward Islands, and then curving northward and really being much more of a direct threat towards Bermuda, while being a major rip current threat for the U.S. East Coast, as well as, of course, Puerto Rico and those areas. Now, the intensity guidance for Erin, most models obviously bring it into hurricane status and will very likely become a hurricane. And most models also bring it into more than likely as well becoming a major hurricane, at least a Category 3 if you bring it towards that Category 4 intensity range. So we'll definitely have to keep our eyes out as we get towards the end of this weekend, the very beginning of next week, to see if Erin really does take full advantage of those really warm sea surface temperatures that will be widespread to around 29 to 30 degrees Celsius. Actually, let's kind of zoom into that area a little more if we can. Yeah, here we go. So Erin is kind of right now a bit off the screen of this current map that I'm showing you guys, but it is moving into an area, especially as it gets to be right north of the Leeward Islands, Virgin Islands, Puerto Rico, into an area of 29 to 30 degrees Celsius waters, which is, as we know, plenty warm enough, sea surface temperature wise at the very least, for any tropical cyclone to really feed off of and intensify even rapidly. So along with that, it does seem like Erin will as well move out of that much more inhibiting Saharan air region that it's currently in. So it won't really have to deal with that dry air or even wind shear for that matter, because currently the intensity for Erin is really at a lid right now, because really more than anything just that dry air. But as it especially gets towards north of Puerto Rico, Leeward Islands, Virgin Islands, and then starts to make its northward turn at some certain point, which we're not totally clear on yet, but it does seem like it will likely make a northward turn more out to sea, offshore of the U.S. East Coast, still more than likely at this point. It will really be able to take advantage of those way warmer than normal waters. That is which is more than sufficient for a tropical cyclone to intensify, while also being in a much more unstable environment with no dry air or wind shear inhibiting its intensity. So definitely by that time, as it gets north of that area, towards Sunday, Monday is really when it can really rapidly intensify. So we will definitely have to keep our eyes out and really keep track of it as we get especially as we get into the weekend and towards the end of this weekend. Now, taking a look at the general 2025 Atlantic hurricane season at this point, we've had 5 total named storms, no hurricanes, no major hurricanes, but Erin's likely going to change that, becoming the first hurricane, and at this point, it's also likely the first major hurricane of the season. We have now had 23 total fatalities, and the total damage is around $62 million in damage. We are approaching the peak of the season rapidly. We're now in the middle of August. Peak of the hurricane season is September 10th specifically. So we are just under a month away from the official peak of the hurricane season, but we are now entering that time frame to see the most likelihood of tropical cyclones forming in the Atlantic. The total ACE currently, let's see, it should be here. Yeah. Current ACE in the Atlantic, accumulated cyclone energy, is at 5.1 units, and Erin being very obviously the longest lasting system up to this point, and will be the longest lasting system once it dissipates, will end up racking up the most amount of accumulated cyclone energy points or units to this point from any of the tropical cyclones we've had. Most of them being very weak tropical storms. Now Barry and Chantal have been the main ones to be the most damaging and deadly, while Erin, obviously damage still unknown, but it has already apparently killed 9 people, being also the first Cape Verde system of this year's hurricane season. So, and obviously, as we know, over these last 6, 7, 8 years, we've had plenty of those types of systems become some of the most infamous major hurricanes, most damaging, most deadly major hurricanes we've seen in the Atlantic. Just look at 2017, really, particularly over these last several years. But that's really it for now on Erin. I will continue to update you guys as we get through the rest of this week, especially into this weekend. I'll definitely keep you guys updated. And I'll try to have it be more of a daily release schedule for updates for this system. But for now, Erin's not really strengthening too much, but we will likely be seeing Erin start to strengthen a good bit more fairly soon, and especially as we get towards Friday and the weekend. So especially by then, I will definitely be giving you guys a lot more daily updates for the system So hopefully you guys found this video informative, helpful, interesting. How strong do you think Erin will get? Comment down below. Do you think it'll get just to Category 3 status and only get to like 115, 120 miles per hour? Or do you think it will become stronger than that and get even towards Category 4 status? Subscribe as well for future updates on the system, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye.